What's up, degenerates? Marcas Grant Michael F. Florio with you, and it is the fantasy offseason. I mean, such as it is. Florio, how is your offseason going so far?
It's going pretty good. First, I get to be here talking fantasy football with you, and then, it gives me some time to dive a little deeper on these players, so I'm always excited for that.
Well, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the way the offseason started for a couple of teams. The Lions and the Rams got it going with a bang by swapping quarterbacks. Yes, there were some draft picks that went along with it, but the big part of it is Matthew Stafford goes from Detroit to L.A. Jared Goff goes from L.A. to the Motor City. So we're going to dive into what this means fantasy-wise for all the other pieces going forward. But let's start with the quarterbacks. Matthew Stafford making the move out to the West Coast, a guy who's been a pretty good fantasy quarterback for most of his career, but now he gets to work with Sean McVay in that Rams offense. So for you, does this make him a league winner? And where would you think about taking him in 2021 drafts?
I'm not so sure he's a league winner. Where I have him pegged right now is in the bottom part of the QB1s. I think he belongs with like Tom Brady. Like if you miss out on the top 8 or 9, really what I value as elite quarterbacks, I think Matt Stafford is right after there. He could come in. I think he could put really good numbers in this offense. He does. I'm not going to say he can't completely be a league winner because we've seen Sean McVay do some really spectacular things with this offense in Los Angeles, but he doesn't run as much. So for me, I would put him just behind those quarterbacks that can add points with their legs as well.
For me, I have said for years that Matthew Stafford is the patron saint of the church of wait on a quarterback. If you are one of those people who wants to wait until later in your draft to take a quarterback, Matthew Stafford is the guy for you. For me, I would wait until the 9th round or later to possibly take a swing at him. I don't think he's a league winner, but he's not going to kill your fantasy roster either, especially being in Los Angeles with a great play caller like Sean McVay and with the weapons he has around him. What, for me, keeps him out of that solid top tier of quarterbacks is sort of, as you touched on, he just doesn't run the football all that much. Matthew Stafford has a career rushing total of 1,198 yards. Lamar Jackson ran for 1,200 yards all by himself in 2019. So that is going to be kind of a hindrance, but I think what he does with his arms and the fact that he's got a lot of great pass catchers is going to keep him among the QB1s, I think, in 2021. But speaking of pass catchers in Los Angeles, we know there is a ton of them. Is there one in particular, though, that you would try to target ahead of the others next year?
Yeah, I think it is the man with the best nickname on this team. I think it is Bobby Trees. First, Matt Stafford is just a better play-action passer than Jared Goff is. All of his numbers indicate that he has more success in that. And the Rams ran play-action the 5th most of all teams in 2020. And it was Robert Woods who led in basically every stat while they were on those play-action passes. Targets, catches, yards, all of that. So I think that these two are a really good pairing here. And Stafford is also a better downfield thrower than Jared Goff has been throughout his career, so maybe that even leads to Robert Woods getting used a little bit more downfield like we haven't seen him use with the Rams in a little bit.
That last point is the biggest one to me. I felt like regardless of who the quarterback was going to be this year, Robert Woods was the guy that you wanted to target first in this offense. I just love the way that they have made him a Swiss Army knife. They line him up inside, outside. You see him used on these jet sweeps. They just want to get the football in his hands. Now he gets what I assume is an upgraded quarterback with Stafford there. That's only going to help his production. And I do like the thought that he might be more of a downfield threat. So much of this Rams passing game in the last year plus was about short, quick throws, just trying to keep the pressure off Jared Goff and get the ball in the hands of his pass catcher. So I'm looking forward to having a guy that is going to try and challenge vertically in Stafford. And I think that's going to be good news for Robert Woods. But we can't ignore Cooper Kupp. I mean, obviously, this is a guy who's been very productive. What do you expect from him now with Stafford at quarterback?
Yeah, Cooper Kupp just a couple years ago was a top 5 fantasy wide receiver, and I know he fell off a little bit last year, but he still had over 120 targets for his 2nd straight season, topped 1,000 yards in 2 straight as well. I think that Cooper Kupp is a really strong pick for those like myself who like to wait on wide receivers and attack running back, maybe even attack tight end in the first 2 or 3 rounds. If that is the case, you could get Cooper Kupp in like the 5th or the 6th round, it's looking like right now. And I think that is a really strong value. Last season, the Rams went so run heavy, and I think that them bringing in Matt Stafford is a sign that they want to start passing the ball a little bit more. And that can only help Cooper Kupp because Marcus, he had 35% of his targets and fantasy points in 3 games last year. That is not good last I checked.
That is not good at all. And I come back to, again, what we talked about, Stafford being more willing to push the ball downfield. And I think that's going to help Kupp as well. What has been the big difference in his production over the last few years has been the number of touchdowns he's scored. What I was surprised to look at was that Cooper Kupp has only had 1,000-yard receiving season in his career. It just feels like he's had more because we expect him to be so productive. But I do think you can expect around 90 catches, probably around 900 to 1,000 yards. Now, if he is used more as a downfield threat, if the Rams can open up the passing game, then I expect that touchdown number to go up. And we could be talking about Cooper Kupp certainly as a high-end wide receiver too. Maybe let's get nuts and think about him as a low-end wide receiver 1. Why not? It's crazy, but we like to do crazy here. That's what we do. Let's turn our attention, though, now over to Detroit, where Jared Goff is going to settle in as the quarterback, new head coach, new offensive coordinator. It's kind of a new setup there in the Motor City. If you're looking at the primary pass catchers in Detroit, I think Kenny Golladay is the first name that comes to mind. But Florio, he is a pending free agent. We don't know if he's going to be there, but let's say for the sake of argument that he stays. How do you feel about him with Jared Goff at quarterback?
Not as great as I felt about him with Matt Stafford as quarterback, and that is exactly what we were talking about for the Rams. It hurts the Lions. Jared Goff is not as good of a downfield thrower as Matt Stafford. He has never shown that he will throw the ball downfield as often as Matt Stafford will either. Stafford, we saw for years with Calvin Johnson, and then it kind of resurged with Kenny Golladay. He's not afraid to air it out and give his receiver a chance to go up and catch the ball at the high point, to go one-on-one against the D-back. But is Jared Goff going to do that? I'm not so sure. To me, it all comes down to price with Kenny Golladay. He was the wide receiver 9 2 years ago, and if you could get him for a discount this year and say like the 4th or the 5th round as a wide receiver 2, I would like that a lot more. But he's Kenny Golladay. If he starts to get some hype and he climbs a little bit, then I'll probably be out.
What is going to, I think, help Golladay, provided he stays in Detroit, is I just think he's going to be a target monster there. I like Marvin Jones, but he has been so inconsistent over the course of his career. There really are no other wide receivers that you look at and feel like can really pick up the slack in this offense. So if it is still Kenny Golladay as the wide receiver 1, I think a volume of targets is certainly going to help. But the other guy that's going to get a whole lot of attention is TJ Hockenson, who we have seen sort of progress year by year at that tight end spot. I wrote a 4-part column on tight ends. You can check it out at NFL.com. And one of the things that attracts me to Hockenson is that he sort of has that nice blend of being a big-time target guy in the offense. He's a guy who they like to use downfield a little bit as sort of an air yards guy. And on top of it, he's good after the catch with the ball in his hands. And I think, if you were talking about a tight end not named Kelsey or Kittle or Waller, those are sort of the things you want to have all together. And I think TJ Hockenson is going to have that. We've also seen that Jared Goff's not really afraid to target the tight end. We saw that with the mix of Gerald Everett and Tyler Higbee in Los Angeles. So, I mean, I'm wondering, are you still okay on some level with TJ Hockenson with Jared Goff at quarterback?
Yeah, I am. I think the fact that Goff might not throw down the field nearly as much as Stafford will only help Hockenson, because we saw it last year repeatedly. Like the target in the short to intermediate throws that they were going to a lot was TJ Hockenson. And I expect, whether Golladay is there or not, for him to be a top 2 target in this passing game. And he didn't have like the high ceiling numbers of those top 3 tight ends, like you said, Marcus, but those 3 guys are going to be off the board by round 3. I expect Hockenson then there to be a gap before the next tight ends go, but I expect him to be in that second tier of tight ends with like Mark Andrews and some other tight ends like that. And I think that's exactly where he belongs to get drafted.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time talking about the aerial attacks of both these teams, but there is going to be an impact on the running backs on both sides. So I'm going to ask you right now, and this is non-binding, but we'll talk about it. If you had to choose between Cam Akers and DeAndre Swift next year, who are you siding with?
Before this trade, it would have been DeAndre Swift, but with this trade, I'm going to go with Cam Akers just because I think Matt Stafford really helps the running back position. In the passing game especially, he threw last season 22% of his passes to a running back, and that is on par with his career norm, whereas Jared Goff was down at 12%, and he's never even had one season where he's thrown 20% of his passes to a running back. So the added involvement in the passing game for Cam Akers, I think, is huge. Plus, again, the downfield throws, right? We could talk about that in the passing game a lot, but that helps the running game because you're stretching the field. You have to have the secondary and the safeties back to worry about those deep passes, which then only opens up stuff near the line of scrimmage. It's the reason why the Rams in their peak, Todd Gurley, when he was putting up all these monsters fantasy numbers, was hardly seeing 8 men stacking the box because they just couldn't do it because of that Rams passing attack. So I think Cam Akers, because of the team he has around him, gets the edge here, but I like both of these two a lot.
I think both of these guys are going to come off the board fairly early in drafts, maybe a little bit earlier than I would like, especially when you're talking about DeAndre Swift. But Cam Akers, I think we saw at the end of last year, took over as the lead runner there in Los Angeles, and I think with an upgraded quarterback only gets better. I will say, though, look, this is not to suggest that DeAndre Swift is going to fall off a cliff or have an awful season. I think there are things to sort of be interested in with him there. We know Anthony Lynn has taken over as the offensive coordinator, and in my wildest dreams, I'm telling a story where maybe he has an Austin Eckler type role. He runs the football, he catches the football out of the backfield. We'll see what happens with some of the other backs around him, what the future is going to be for, say, an Adrian Peterson or Kerryon Johnson. But this looks like DeAndre Swift's backfield, and while he might not have the potential with the offense that he would have with Matthew Stafford there, I still think he's going to get a whole lot of touches. I mean, look, Florio, if you have to pick DeAndre Swift, where are you comfortable taking him next year in a draft?
I think as of right now, I'm comfortable taking him in the second round. Obviously, the later in the round, the better. But I think come this summer, he's going to be an early second-round pick. And to your points on Anthony Lynn, Marcus, that is why, first, I think DeAndre Swift is a great talent, as we all do. But Anthony Lynn is a big reason why I'm excited about him. In 4 years with the Chargers as their head coach, 26% of the passes and 41% of their total touches went to the running back position. So I think that Anthony Lynn only means really good things for DeAndre Swift. And he's already hyping him up as someone who could touch the ball 20 to 25 times a game.
Hey, running backs, look out for other running backs. So hopefully we can take that into the 2021 season. Hey, for more information and good things like this, you can check us out on the NFL Fantasy Football Show, wherever you get podcasts. It goes all year round. We got lots of great information. Also have some weird stuff, but we also have a lot of good stuff too. Plus, you can get more great on-demand videos by checking us out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/NFL Fantasy Football. Take it easy. We'll talk to you soon. Happy drafting, everybody.